Greetings, Marsh here, and welcome to episode 41 of my Industrial Revolution 3 playthrough. In this episode, we're going to set up and test our nuclear power. Enjoy. And it looks like this just stopped, because now we have 100 pieces in there. Unfortunately, we do need to have our minimum amount of 235 before that logic will work correctly. So for now, let's just unhook it and let it fill up. I am kind of worried that coal keeps getting lower and lower. And yeah, that mine is getting pretty sad. So I think before we build our new reactors, we kind of need to just switch the mines out. Can we use the same train for this? Yeah, it looks like it's all on the same network, so it should work. Surprisingly, that coal didn't really last all that long. It was about 1 million. So we've been using a lot of it for our power. So it's really good that we're switching over to uranium now. So for now, we don't really need to mess with the tracks or anything. We don't need to do a two-stop system like we did with uranium here, because that mine's going to be gone soon. We just need to have the new mine set up and ready to go. So when we run out of coal, we can just assign the train to a new mine and everything will be fine. Actually, since we're here, we might as well upgrade these to faster modules. So there's our new coal mine. It is enormous. And let's just upgrade these to use the better modules. Simply because that's what we're going to have in our inventory anyway. No point in carrying around tier 2 modules, just because they're slightly more materially efficient. So there we go. It should be an awful lot of coal on each side, pretty much. And we don't quite have enough modules. Alright, that should be good to go whenever the time comes to actually start using it. Well, I see the uranium's going down. Does that mean the train is there? Pretty much. And the mine is empty. We don't really need the sulfuric acid anymore. Kind of want to point it the other direction. Yeah, because that is empty. So now if this comes back to get loaded again, that should basically fill it all up. And this station's going to be converted to running on oil instead, so it definitely doesn't need to have any of this in here. There we go. Well, we barely knew you, but goodbye. Our gold mine is getting a little sad too. And it's especially sad because there's no more gold inside the walls. So that's something we're going to have to expand for. But luckily, we just don't use it very fast. Well, before we plan our new reactors, we probably should make sure we're manufacturing all these items. Heat pipes we can easily make. The heat exchangers we can easily make. Same with steam turbines, although it will require heavy copper cable, and we probably should send the rubber up. But I don't know, rubber is used in such small quantities, it may not matter. And honestly, at some point, we're probably just going to make the rubber from the ethanol. But so long as we have this rubber tree farm here, we might as well keep using it. Knowing, however, that it's probably not long for this world because it's well within the pollution cloud. This one suffers the most from it, but I'm guessing we're probably just going to tear these out and build even more of them out here. And sure, how about we start with the steam turbines, which does require the heavy copper cable. And that is going to go into other things, but not in huge quantities. So we can probably just have a few assembling machines and call it a day. Although this will be a good opportunity to figure out the new module complement, because 2 speeds and 2 efficiencies gets us up to 100% crafting speed with 40% of max energy consumption. However, we can do 2 efficiencies, and I see the energy consumption is -30, which means if we put another one in here, then now it is perfectly balanced at -80% energy consumption, but we get 50% extra crafting speed. Whereas these ones have 30% extra crafting speed, but only -60% energy. So this is the most efficient way of using your modules, assuming you don't care how fast the machine goes, and in this case, we don't really care. So let's pop everything in. These are definitely not fast enough. And there we go. So we can do a steam turbine here, maybe like this. Probably, yeah, insanely fast, and we have no hope of ever keeping up with it. But oh well. Let's see, we need heat pipes, and we can potentially do some direct insertion, although it needs regular pipes too. where it's one on each side, where that one's a heat exchanger, that one's the heat pipes, that one's just regular pipes. So is this anywhere close to balanced? Kind of. Although that's going to use way more resources than we possibly can supply it. Although in this case, if we put one speed module on each side, that does balance them out, so we can pretend like it's going to be a balanced setup. So let's see how all this works. Making the heat pipes. Very slowly. Might need a faster inserter. But even that one inserter isn't enough. And technically those aren't enough either. So we have to awkwardly do that. I feel like that would be better if it was in chess. And just make sure that they're limited. There we go. Let's see, it did not make the pipes because we didn't do the plates. So a little bit of an awkward change there. But it's working. Let's throw the steel in here. And hook it up. And yeah, seems to be going. Exactly how much does this all use? 15 a second? Well, we certainly could do more than that. So let's double this up at least. Because after that, our weird belt shenanigans are starting to get in the way. Making most of what we need, but now we need the nuclear reactors themselves. Now that all this stuff is part of the robot network, we can just build this wherever. Just somewhere that makes some sense. Where it doesn't get blocked by anything. Well, that's an enormous amount of items that'll never keep up with. How about let's just put stack inserters in there. Let's see, let's make that only the radiation shielding, only the graphite. And this one is everything else. So we'll pick them up to clear it out, drop it right back down. And there we go. It actually crafts it pretty fast. We might as well grab 4 of them, so we know we're going to need 4 of them. Okay, then we need to plan for a reactor build. Ultimately, we're going to have 4 reactors in each setup, and we need to come in here and say it's going to be a 4 reactor setup, which will give us the proper bonus. And is it going to let us put the steam in here? Do we need to nest it down? Factory by block can't link, huh? That's weird. Well, I guess we can type it in manually then. So we type in 48, and we have used up all of the steam, and we have an idea of how much water we need. And then we have to put in the turbines. So if these numbers are to be believed, it's not an exact ratio, but it's 4 to 48, and then 82.5. Of course, each one of these is going to need to have water from somewhere, and we're probably just going to have a little canal coming in and supplying the water rather than dealing with a bunch of pipes. These would request a fuel cell, and honestly, they really only need to have one because of how slow it uses the fuel. And now we need some on conditions, because I would prefer to not waste the uranium fuel if possible. So it's time for an inventory sensor. This is essentially what I use it for, where you can attach it, and right now you can't really see what it's saying other than 15 degrees of temperature. But if we made some commentators here and look at signals, this gives us an idea of what inventory sensor could tell us. It could tell us the state of the crafting progress in percent, the temperature of the reactor, how much fuel is in the reactor, and also if any of these vehicles are detected. So we have to think, what are all of the conditions that we would want to insert fuel into the reactor? Well, a big one is that the remaining fuel is basically 0, although we'll want to have some time in here for the inserter to actually swing so it doesn't turn off. So how about if there's less than 100 megajoules, output a green signal, which means swing the inserter. What else? Well, a big one is the temperature is too low. And the minimum temperatures of these is 500, but we'd want it to be hotter than that because it needs to reach the end of the pipe. So how about, let's say 650? We'll just have to see how that number works. If so, green signal. Another thing that has to be true is that the fuel actually has to be in these requester chests. If it's not, there's no point in swinging, because then it would run on less than 100% power because it wouldn't get the neighbor bonus. And then that kind of defeats the point, especially if we're in a low fuel condition. So we would need to convert each of those signals. If uranium fuel cell is greater than 0, output a signal, and let's just use a different signal for this. Let's use the blue signal. So all of those are on, If blue signal is equal to 4, no other number will suffice, then it will turn it into a green signal. So that's another go condition. Another one is that the accumulators are low enough to require that these turn on at all, because the act of putting the fuel in functions as a SR latch. We don't have to build one for this. And as far as the accumulator percent, it's going to replace our power plant here that burns coke, because we're still potentially going to be putting out high octane fuel to burn, as well as this ethanol here, but it'll be A is less than 25%. And the cool thing about doing this at the reactor is you can actually set different groups of reactors to turn on and off at different accumulator percents. And there's actually one final on condition here, and that is simply that we want it to be on. And we'll do that with this combinator here. And if we want it to be on, we'll flip the combinator and it'll give us a green signal. So that's our 5 on conditions. So if we take them and plop them in there, we can shoot the red wire in, so it's getting access to the information from the inventory sensor, the status of these. There is something else that would be nice to do. Having the reactors on and off could be useful for our power indicator here, and I definitely did very complicated versions of this in the Angel Bob's factory, but nonetheless, it would still be useful here to know if the reactors have turned on or off. And how are we doing? Man, we're so close. 38 pieces of 235, so this is just about to start going. When it does, we'll probably start seeing uranium flicker on here. But the way we can check if reactors are on and off is simply, is there fuel in the reactor? And we would want to send that signal out of this reactor and across this green wire, which is shared by all reactors. So we'll do one more combinator here, then put it right in there, and have the two connected. It's kind of hard to tell that they're connected. I wonder if I should just move this so it's a little more obvious, but whatever. And then a green wire to go on the shared one. And in here, we're simply looking, is there fuel in the reactor? If so, output a common signal to tell us that the reactor is on. And in this case, a uranium fuel cell is probably the best thing. And to make sure this works, we need to make sure that the signals are not crossed, and I don't think they would be. So if this reactor is on, it will send a fuel cell. And we'll have to calculate that later based on how many reactor setups we have. But right now, just a single reactor setup is going to be 480 megawatts, so it's probably going to be fine as is. And there's some other things we can do with this. Mainly that hovering over the reactor is kind of an annoying way to see how much fuel is in there or what the temperature is. So let's do some Nixie tubes to accomplish that. And this red wire will already have the signal that we need. And sometimes these can be blocked by smoke, so it's not always something that works. This bottom one will be the temperature of the reactor, and it's already on. And this top one will be the amount of fuel inside of it. And it's 0. Oh yeah, lights and things. Not that there's much room for them, but I suppose we should put some lights in here. How many do we have? Still 38 pieces? Come on. Okay, I think our design is pretty good. We'll have to give it a test here and see. But for now, it's time to chop it out. And of course, factory robots help. And who knows where to put it? Well, we have tree farms and stuff there that we don't want to get in the way of, and we definitely want room for this to expand. How about we just put it right here for now? There's nothing actually here, but we can totally start expanding it this way. Go into the water if we need to. It's not like it's going to create any pollution, but oh well. We are going to need, however, something that we haven't used yet, and that's the water fill explosive. And it's going to require some interesting things, but also it doesn't really matter, because now that we have robots, we can just build this wherever. Well, the big thing that it's going to require is explosives. Let's plop it in here. Oop, there we go. It's running. Let's check it out. And you can see that it is totally going and actually generating resources pretty quickly. So we can plop that on there, and now it is not moving at all because we have plenty of uranium in there. And we'll let this one machine run on speed modules until it basically gets caught up, and then we can make that efficient. Anyway, we're slowly getting water fill explosives, and I've never tried these before, so it'll be interesting to see how they work. And yeah, if it went like right here, it would basically be right in the middle. So we'll do that. So we simply need to decide where we'll want this canal to be. And right here seems good. So we'll just take it to the end. And I'm running out of these, but we have robots, so I guess they'll just place them for us. And each one of these, when it explodes, will expose just that tile. It's a lot of explosives, but they're coming to immediately help. We'll just place these on the end, and then the ones connected to the water flash. And then there it goes. It's actually pretty awesome. Made it. And it creates shallow water that you can walk through. And as far as the amount of water that each one of these needs, it's well below what one pipe would need. We could connect two of these together, but just to avoid any water throughput issues and because we can make our canals automatically, why not just have a bunch of offshore pumps everywhere? And looks like we need a little bit more here. Just to make sure there's no issues. And we have to do the same thing up here. It's a little bit longer this time, but concept is the same. And by doing this, we can build another one to the right or above or wherever we need to put it, and the water will follow. Well, one other thing we can set up is this green wire right here. It's both going to have the number of reactors on it and also the A signal. And to get an A signal, we can just use an accumulator right here. So that's connected and it'll be in there. The number will be wrong and we'll need to max out the accumulators first, but we'll get that set up in a bit. Also, what will come through here is how many of the reactors are on. So we need an arithmetic combinator for this. Send it in. Basically, we're just separating the A signal, but also calculating where the input is the number of fuel cells times 100 to turn it into a percent. And the output will be the uranium fuel cell. And the other one is divided by the number of reactor groups we have. Right now, it's just 1. So that's going to be 1, and it doesn't really need to be there. But if we add more reactor groups, we can just change this number. And we could do it here too, but instead of calculating it, it's just a little easier to type in the number of groups right there. And the number on top, I guess, we'll use for our fuel amounts. And then the green wire we can use for the status of power. What it means is we have a long wire to run here, all the way up there, and going in. Well, I suppose it's 4th of July time again. And there we go. I don't want to stand on that stuff in case it can kill you. I almost want to test it, but I also don't. That's so cool how it's sequential, where you can set everything ahead of time and just put one next to the water and away it goes. That has to be the most satisfying water fill mod that I've seen, and that's just part of IR3. That is neat. I kind of want to test this to make sure that it works. Whoops, I made another HUD combinator. That's going to be in the inventory for a long time. So it's hard to see with all these wires, but let's just generate a remaining fuel signal, and it could be whatever. Let's make it 1,000, and then if we do that, it now actually shows up on here because it is recording that number. But if you look at this wire, the accumulator signal is there, but also we're getting the signal for the fuel cell. And then we come in here and the signal is 100. So that's saying that 100% of our reactors are online and producing power. So if we had more reactor groups and they were running on different logic, that would tell us the status of all of that. But we don't need that, so we'll remove it. And this isn't quite ready to go yet, but we finally have a full extra craft in here, so it's running nice and quickly. And I guess it would technically be full once we've got some 235s just chilling out right here. And we're not quite there because it's probably going to very much fill itself up. But nonetheless, we can continue the build while we're waiting for that. So we can remove the things that we've done. And now we need a 0.3 centrifuge to make the fuel cells. And might as well space it down a little bit because it's not like they have to be mashed right in here. This does require radiation shielding, and we're actually making it somewhere else. However, do we want to send it back? The reason being that we will be consuming 0.16 of the empty cells, which will create scrap, which we can then process back into the resources that go into making the shielding. So even though we're needing shielding, since we're getting back so much of it in scrap, I'm thinking that instead we'll actually send the base components. Well, there's something else we can kind of test here, because I want to have everything that makes power on this list with a percent, not just our nuclear power. So one thing we can do is test these. So I kind of want to unhook it for a second to let the ethanol build up. And we can use the inventory sensor on the back end of one of these, and the way that works is that you need to position the wires away from the thing that it's testing. So if we put it on something that had fuel, you see now that it has a signal saying what the inventory is. Well, we could use that to determine if the thing is actually on or not. So let's hook it up to a decider and say, if ethanol exists, then we need to output a signal saying that it's on. And let's output 1 ethanol. So basically each one of these lines would count as a 1 if it was properly hooked up. And we need to go through each group of these. And sometimes the pipes aren't going to behave. And then we'll need a signal. It's going to be on the green wire, so we might as well set it to green now. Not that it matters. We need to do the calculation before we send it on its way, based on however many groups we have. First, multiply it by 100 to turn it into a percent, and then count the number of groups. Or also just count the number of combinators. It's 14. So divided by 14 and output an ethanol will tell us what the number is. Wow, that's a long wire reach. So let's test it. We'll use a constant combinator again. And let's say we have 3 of these groups running. So we'll say the output of ethanol is 3. So we hook it up to the wire. We come over here, and that would be 21% power output from the generators. And that's how it works. And we finally make it back. It's connected. So now we can see if this works by hooking up the ethanol again, and then we should see the number, assuming the fluid makes it all the way to the back. If it doesn't, then we're just not going to see it. And actually, to make sure that it does make it to the back, we should probably do some overflow valves in here, just to make sure that it only fills up 1 before it goes to the next one. There we go. Let's see how this works. So we hook it up. It fills up 1, and it's starting to fill to the next ones, but you see we have ethanol signals slowly increasing by about 7% for each one of these that turns on, and it's basically done. So although you can make vanilla reactors that don't waste fuel, I prefer the inventory sensor just because I think it's easier and it lets you do more stuff that you never could. So then how many groups do we have here? It's the same, we have 14. Of course, all these need to be changed now. I guess we could do it with any condition. We don't have to specifically have them set, but sometimes having them set just makes a little more sense. I'm surprised the train hasn't delivered here. Looks like it's waiting for 18K. Ah, it's equal to 18K, but I got that number wrong. It's actually 24. So sorry if you're screaming at the monitor, but it's fixed now. Is there anything left at this other station? Nope, which means we can get rid of it altogether. Probably should turn the station names on, because now this one can be unused station. Oh, look at that, finally. I saw a 235 in there for a moment. Yeah, that means we're basically filled up now. So eventually this thing's going to stop swinging. And there it is. So that's what we needed to see. So when we continue this belt forward, we have enough to make fuel cells, and we also have enough for this to run at full speed. And we made a fuel cell. So robots are delivering them. And there they are. But because they carry 4 at a time, we filled up with 4, and this one only filled up with 2, but no big deal. So I believe it's time to test this. Let's take a look at our conditions here. We've got a green circle for the fuel condition, a green circle for temperature, green circle for status of having the fuel cells on hand, and a green circle for accumulator charge, which means the last thing that's required is the power switch. And there we go. Strangely enough, the number seems wrong here because these hold 8 gigajoules, but it only says 4 here. Oh yeah, this needs to be stack size of 1, so that was the error. It put too many in there, which is fine. There we are, reaching minimum temperature to start making power, and these are going to keep going as they slowly reach maximum temperature. And let's see what that temperature is when these last ones start running, because we want to basically have this as low as possible and have it actually running at full power. Yeah, it seems like about 650, because it is past 500 down here, which means everything should be producing some amount of power. These ones on the end might not make maximum, but that's pretty good. And we need to let that run for a little bit. But for now, actually, I would like to unhook the coal entirely here. Also, we want to make sure this accumulator number doesn't get too high, because it kind of already is. We really don't want it to be at maximum, because that means that other methods that would normally run would be shut off. So there we go. Now those were basically not going to run at all, and we'll even unhook the coke, because it is consuming some power to run those roboports. So the accumulators are essentially about to be completely filled. And if that thing is still producing power, then that means we do not have enough accumulators for all of that. Yep, we just filled them up. And what is the percentage of fuel left? It's not too bad, but I would say we probably need at least double the amount of accumulators that we currently have. I mean, it didn't overheat, and as long as it doesn't, you're fine. But it is getting warm now. We'll make sure this logic works and this thing shuts off, and having everything fill up is nice because it equalized all of the accumulators, so the logic is correct again. And they're done. And the temperature will go down, and basically we're waiting until the accumulators are ready for more. And because there's so much heat energy in that, it's actually going to take a while, so I'm thinking actually we probably need about 4 times as many accumulators as we currently have, just so that power works correctly. Alright, that's going to be a little while, and it's technically not even enough, but they are slowly cooling down as they're keeping the accumulators completely charged. But I guess we can kind of watch it, because eventually they're going to cool down enough. Hey, look at that! Everything kind of filled up again, and we're almost going to start seeing some 235s in our item list here. So we come down here, and it's barely eking out power, but the temperature is about to 500, and now, finally, the accumulators are going down. Ethanol is trying to help because we just have extra. And yeah, technically our factory would be much cleaner if we didn't use the ethanol, but it has to go somewhere, so we might as well burn it. All things considered, it is one of the cleanest fuels you could possibly burn. Let's start some research, which is going to consume lots of power. And we can do lots of stuff. Well, one easy thing to implement is hydrogen fuel cells. It's the max tier battery that you can use. A lot of random stuff goes into it, all technology that we currently have, and then you charge that, not with electricity, but with hydrogen. And it has a 99.9% of giving you the cell back, so most of the time, it's not damaged. And that would be a 40 megajoules cell with 150% acceleration and 115% top speed. So as far as top speed goes, it's similar to high octane fuel. Doesn't quite have the acceleration, but it's something you can do if you want. I think I'll just stick with the fuel because it's maximum performance, so why not? But this one will allow you to at least power your character. It also potentially has an interesting application where you can burn hydrogen to power your factory if you put the hydrogen into fuel cells first. It's kind of a weird thing. I might try it out, but it is something you can do. So we'll hit research and we'll see how this works. Because if you look at the hydrogen fuel cell and you see what it's burned in, it is actually consumed in a battery generator. And that is the component that we haven't used that can take batteries and consume their power and put it into the electrical network. What you can do is crack your natural gas, or more specifically your coke, into hydrogen, and then turn that hydrogen into fuel cells, and that will essentially allow you to burn coke without producing any pollution. So it's an interesting thing that I'm not sure if I'm going to do, but maybe, we'll see. We must be consuming so little coal now because this tiny bit of coal is technically still there, because we're not just eating through it anymore. Well, I don't think researching this hydrogen fuel cell is going to be enough. How about we hit force fields? First, we'll need to make the super magnet, which is a new crafting building, which requires a bunch of stuff we can make, but specifically we need this superconductive EM coil. And my goodness, does it need the graphene. It is a whole lot of graphene. But nonetheless, we can make it, and also we have robots to just send the stuff across the factory as required. And then if we take an electrum crystal and add liquid helium, we can turn it into a field-aligned electrum crystal, and it just borrows the helium, it does not consume it. And then we can make a field effector by adding a bunch of other stuff that we currently make. And the reason why we want to do all of that is so we can get the max tier of laboratory, which requires, again, a ton of stuff that we can make now. And the new thing is the quantum field ring, which is 16 field effectors. So my goodness, and also all of those superconductive EM coils, so it gets expensive. However, it has a research speed of 8, and it's 8 plus 20. And yes, it's a 750 kilowatt building, but man is it fast, and it has an additional module slot. So the speed of that is going to be 28. And if we look at our current labs, the speed is 4.9, so it's incredibly fast compared to what we're doing. But we're actually doing research, so we can check that we're consuming 1.96 and we're producing 1.4. So it'll be nice to research that, and generally speaking, whenever you can improve the efficiency of your research, you should. And hey, look at that, we're actually building up some uranium. And as far as pollution, yeah, it's getting a little bad out here, especially right here where we're making all of that steel. And it looks like we are still building up carbon dioxide. Wait, where's our radar? Did I unhook something? Oh yeah, for sure. Can we use robots to fix this? There's no radar. So the answer is not really. So let's get this hooked up real quick. Right there. But the reactors are probably going to turn on right before I get there. Whew. Yep, pretty much. But it got below 25% and they hooked up, and we want to make sure that it does not go to 0 on the accumulator, so it takes a few seconds for this to warm up, and that is the disadvantage of running it in a cold state like this, in other words having it always connected, is that it does take a few moments for it to warm up. But nonetheless though, accumulators are being charged fairly rapidly. So it takes a moment for it to get going, but it's pretty good. But there we go. They're done and cooling off again. And then robots deliver more fuel cells. So let's see how this works. Where they very quickly process through all of that stuff. It gets sent to the relevant locations. And that was technically enough to make a couple more. They get placed in here, which gives them priority over what the robots bring. Well, we unlocked these hydrogen fuel cells, so how about we make a few? However, that's going to have to wait until the next episode. Thanks for watching, and I will see you later.